situation there are.
So good afternoon, ma'am. Ma'am, we are on live. Shall we start, ma'am? So Ramnath, are we on live?
Divya, can you just stop this presentation first, and then first you keep the poster on the background so that it has an introduction. And after you have introduced the speaker, then only you can put this PPT.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Yeah. So I think you're already online and you should start.
Yes, ma'am. I'll start, ma'am. A very good afternoon and a warm welcome to everyone joined in today's webinar session as we celebrate 68 Wildlife Week celebrations from October 2nd to 8th, 2022 on theme Recovering Key Species for Ecosystem Restoration on Tree Lifestyle for the Environment, highlighting each species. Joined us today to speak on topic wildlife conservation in rapidly changing the world is Dr. Shravan Rathore, project veterinarian from Wildlife Institute of India, and Dr. Nandini Rajamani, associate professor from Department of Biology from Indian Institute of Sciences. A brief introduction about Dr. Shravan Singh Rathore. Sir completed his master's in veterinary obstetrics, gynecology and reproduction from Rajasthan University of Veterinary and Animal Sciences in Biknar, Rajasthan. He served with Forest Department Government of Rajasthan as wildlife veterinarian at Matsya Biological Park, Jodhpur. Dr. Shravan has an experience of successful rescue and rehabilitation of several strayed leopards, sloth bears, and tiger. Today he will speak us on majority of them scheduled animals in Wildlife Protection Act and the animals rescued which have only 29 to 30% for rehabilitation. Over to you, sir, to please begin your talk.
Thank you, Divya. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Dr. Shravan Singh Rathore, wildlife veterinarian. Nowadays, I am working with Forest Department of Rajasthan Sarkar and Wildlife Store of India. Today, my presentation is on my previous work I did in the Matsya Biological Park as a wildlife veterinarian, and we also run wildlife rescue center in Jodhpur. So, my topic is on the rescue and rehabilitation of the wild fauna of the Western Rajasthan, particularly. Mostly, we work in 6 Western Rajasthan districts of the Western Rajasthan. Sometimes we also have some other districts cases, referred cases. Majority of our cases, we deal with chinkara. Approximately 60% of the wild fauna we received is chinkara, that Indian gazelles. Then we also received 10% black buck, blue bull, P4, and other wild fauna also. Among other, we have leopard, hyena, monkey, Indian wolves, jackal, civet. Some birds is also we received. Among them, we received some Hobara bustard, vulture, hawk, kite, domestic crane, etc. As you know, we have plenty of chinkara in our Western Rajasthan. As compared to chinkara and black buck, as you all know, but as a student, I have prepared a slide for the student. So, chinkara body weight is 25 to 35 kg as compared to the black buck. Black buck have 35 to 45 kg of body weight. Chinkara come in puberty approximately 2.5 years. As compared to the black buck, females come in 2 years of the years. As per life is concerned, Chinkara's life span is 10 to 12 years, and black buck life span is 10 to 15 years approximately. The gestation period of the Chinkara female is 5.5, and black buck approximately 6 months of. We have also plenty of blue bulls, nilgai, injured. In the human-animal conflicts in the wild fauna, the blue bull is the first number. A lot of blue bulls injured due to barbed wire, and sometimes people also trapped in the barbed wire. And it's our data we receiving day per year, increasing our receiving animals. We have studied our wildlife rescue center 2007. From beginning, we are increasing the patient ratio, as you know in slide. But we have only 29 to 32% of the success rate. Success rate means fully recovered animals we have rehabilitated in the wild. Other than that, we have some handicapped animals. So handicapped, all the fauna we have to keep in our rescue center. Cause of injury, as you know, majority of them are herbivorous due to the feral dog's bite, road accident. Then 50% of the trap in barbed wire or chain link fencing. Some of them is also fallen down the dry wells and ditches. We have also received 12% of the cases of old age and diseased condition animals. Poaching is also reported, approximately 3%. Damage due to stray dogs, as you know, we have plenty of cases of stray dogs bite. Sometimes people come that our domestic animal beaten by or slaughtered by the leopard. So we have to examine properly, but that in the slide you can easily identify that case of the dog bite, not the leopard one. So I include the slide for the student. They can judge, and even people can understand that which type of bite is leopard and which type of bite is due to the dog. So it's clear-cut dog bite. Transportation is a big task for our forest officers, forest workers. So during transportation, we have to avoid soak and transportation soak. So our team is try to minimize the stress. For that, they kept blindfold over the eyes and ears. So injured animal, particularly chinkara and black buck, receive minimum voice of external voice and receive minimum visual inputs. So we have the trained transportation facility also. Sometimes we are also facing with wildlife offense, gunshot injury. From village, people come with some barbed wire injured animals and then say that the case of the gunshot wound. So in such cases, we have to identify the cause of the injury. So such type of all the four photos is barbed wire injury is not gunshot. As for treatment is concerned, usually we give normally in majority of the cases antibiotic and analgesic, antibiotic and corticosteroid if needed. We wash with the PP solution and then spray some antibiotic or continuous treatment until the wound is healed. Treatment, we try to reduce the stress of the animals. during treatment. Some village people, volunteers also come with injured animals, and we treat accordingly. At appropriate time and situation and place, we rehabilitate the animal. At the appropriate, I mean, at the same place or nearby the same place, we rehabilitate them. Handling of injured animals, injured bird particularly, is also precious job. So whenever we receive any big bird, first we try to blindfold the bird, then we examine properly, and also control the birds so that they can't got injured again due to the mishandling. Bird threats. We have also seen some cases of collision with power line, particularly big bird, Great Indian Bustard like bird, particularly in the Jaisalmer district, Western Rajasthan, extreme border area, where a lot of windmill power line is there. Other intake of seed treated with pesticides during sowing season is also reported. We have received a lot of cases of the birds pesticides poisoning. With the same type, consumption of pesticides spared leaves also we have seen. Sometimes dog bite during the display season of the peak of foliage also reported, and we have treated accordingly. Human-animals conflicts is also reported, and we have treated. It's pre-planned hunting case of the chinkara. Sometimes we find wild boar attack nearby the buffer zone of our sanctuaries. Iron trap fallen down in the open well. So my request to all of you that whenever you go to field and find any ditch and dry well, so inform the concerned person so that they can fill the dry well or ditches, which is not useful. If useful, then cover with the appropriate structure. So such type of injury is not happen in future, because animal like blue bull is very heavy one. So removing from open well is tedious for forest department. Also not safe for human. Sometimes leopard is also fallen down in the moist well. And forest department should identify these well and it's convince the owner to cover it, fill it. Because recently we have a lot of leopard movement towards Western Rajasthan. So in our Wildlife Rescue Center in Jodhpur, we have attended 36 woman leopard conflict sessions since 2010. Probable cause of the conflicts are also due to the prey animals, species like nilgai, chinkara, wild boar, shifted towards human settlement. Because in nearby the human settlement, there is easy availability of the water and fodder. Consequently, the leopard follow them and come out of the forest area and create the conflicts with the human being. Since leopard is a very adaptive, solitary and territorial animal, can live nearby human settlement and feed on domestic animal also, as you know. In my 36 animal leopard rescue, 33 cases were due to the male leopard. So male is moving towards domestic animal and maybe due to the territorial fight. We have rescued the leopard is from trap case, approximately 3. Darting, we have 24 dart, and then escape from the conflict area. 4 that escape from the area. We have also rescued orphan cubs, 5. Among 5, we have saved 4 cubs. Here's some photographs of the leopard rescue. It's our trap cage, which we are using nowadays. It's some photographs of some wrong and right approach of the cage installation. As you know all, we usually use for darting gelagin and ketamine. Gelagin we use 2 mg per kg body weight and ketamine 4 mg per kg body. If needed, we use yombin citrate for antidote. And for smooth air passage, we also use atropine sulfate according to body weight. In our Western Rajasthan, we have Bisnay community. They pleased to serve the wildlife, particularly chinkara and blackbuck. And they help us extraordinarily. I threw some glance on the Wildlife Protection Act 1972. You all know, but I want to remind you. We have 6 schedules for the prohibition or hunting, management of the protected area, and control of the illegal trade of the wildlife and commerce. As you know, scheduled first animals are lion, leopard, tiger, wolf, Indian cultures, black buck, Himalayan black bear, great Indian bustard, Indian rock python, rhinoceros, etc. I have written only which we are facing in Western Rajasthan particularly. Rhinoceros we don't have, but just I count which are facing and I am having in my mind. We have leopard also, Indian wolf, gazelles, black bucks. We don't have Himalayan black bear, but it's scheduled first, so I included it. But we have great Indian bustard. For that, we have to constrict vitro legal report for the PM examination or any injury report. Then scheduled second animals are Indian cobra, king cobra, jackal, hammal langur, rhesus macaque, Hobara bustard, etc. For PM, we need not to go for the VLC board. Some skin pack pattern for wildlife lover and for student, I have made such slides so we can easily identify whether from which animal the skin belongs to. Majority of you know all these things, but we have seen one fake tiger skin, so it's easily identified by the pattern of the strip and skin color. So if there is tiger skin, then skin color is also black beneath the skin, is beneath the hair. Hopefully my English you can understand. It's for a student, I make slide for easy identification of the footprint of the wild animals. So sometimes there is mark of some wild animals say that we have leopard movement in nearby our village or nearby my animal houses. So this is the basics of the canid and fellid pug mark. Fellid don't have the claw marks, so student can easily identify. As compared to tiger and leopard, tiger pug mark is more than 6 centimeter roughly more than 6 centimeter of the size, 7 by 7 centimeter. Leopard will be the less than 7 centimeter. Thank you. Hello, admin.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Any queries, please tell me. If related to my presentation, please ask me.
So we'll take up at the end of the session, sir, the questions.
Okay.
So after the second speaker presentation. So thank you, sir, for the most insightful talk. It is quite interesting, like to know about the date of rehabilitation in the wild, and also the data which you have collected on covering the survival rate percentage is also very interesting to know. Thank you so much, sir. So the
Thank
question
you.
for the first presentation will be taken up at the end of the session. Now moving on to the second talk, I would like to welcome Dr. Nandini Rajamani, Associate Professor, Department of Biology from Indian Institute of Science. For a brief introduction about ma'am, ma'am is currently working as an Associate Professor at IISER Tirupati. Her lab studies include small mammals like squirrels, pikas, and other lesser known mammals in the Eastern Ghats, Western Ghats, and Trans Himalayas. Madam will speak us today on wildlife conservation in rapidly changing the world. Over to you, ma'am, to please begin your talk.
Hello. Hi, I'm going to share my screen.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Can you see this?
Yes,
Hello?
ma'am, it's visible.
Yeah, okay. All right. You can't see the bar at the bottom, can you? All right. All right. So I'm going to talk to you about some work that we do in my lab about how wildlife respond to changes in the environment and the world around them. And I'm going to use two case studies. As you know, animals respond constantly, life responds constantly, whether it's plants or animals. And we live in a rapidly changing world. This is an example of a projected impact of increased temperatures globally. And as you can see, India falls in a moderate to serious category. And this is a projection for the year 2100. Um, so how do species respond? In reality, we have several case studies. This is the polar bear, which is kind of the poster child for conservation. As you know, the polar bear occurs in the Arctic and is found in a very restricted area. However, even over here, when you do detailed studies and look at populations that might be isolated from each other, it is obvious that not all populations respond in the same way. If you look at the map here, you see colors that are blocks of polar bear populations that are green, yellow, pink, and gray. The gray are populations where we don't have data. The pink are decreasing, as we know. However, there are some populations in yellow that are stable and some that are increasing. And now all this is within just one species. And when you look across species, even if it's a group of related species, we find very drastic differences in how species respond to the same kind of threat. Species are constantly adapting to conditions or trying to adapt to conditions through processes of natural selection. And sometimes this change can be rapid. We are told to believe that Evolution takes a long period of time and happens over long time scales. However, this, as we know from certain studies, can be very rapid. This is an example of a study on the Galapagos finches in the islands of the Galapagos, and it's a system that has been studied for over 50 years by biologists. The system was made famous by Darwin, Charles Darwin, who described the differences in beak sizes across related birds on specific islands. Populations of birds were monitored by scientists, and they looked at species in response to a drought in 1977. And from that one drought, there has been extremely strong directional selection on the evolution of beak size. And we've seen that populations have changed rapidly in the last 40 years. And if we had not done long-term studies, none of this would have been visible. So species also shift in distributions. Examples are pikas, small mammals. So if you live on a mountain and you're exposed to climate change, then when it becomes hotter, if you are a mid-elevation species, you can exploit a higher range. You can move higher up the mountain. But if you're a high elevation species, your habitat is shrinking. So your populations are contracting. You can also simply not be affected by any kind of change. And this is a study in California that looked at historic distributions of small mammals from about 150 years ago to present distributions. And they find that for several species across an altitudinal gradient, some species expand in range, some contract in range, and some species simply show no change or response at all in where they were found compared to where they are found today. So given this background of the fact that species shift in distributions, species respond or species simply don't respond to change, in my lab, we look at small mammals and we ask the questions, how do they adapt to changes? And we pick two systems to study this question with. We look at cold adapted species in the Himalayas, the Trans-Himalayas of Ladakh, Kargil and Kashmir. And we look at marmots and pikas. And we look at South India, where we look at habitat-specific palm squirrels. And I'm going to talk to you about work in the Western Ghats right now. So I'll start with the palm squirrel story and then move on to the marmots. So just a quick background about squirrels. Both of these are marmots and palm squirrels are in the squirrel family. So what are squirrels? They are rodents. They're distributed globally. There are about 285 species. India is very diverse and rich in terms of species with 39 species, and that's about 10% of India's mammals. And their distributions are most diverse in the Northeast and in the Western Ghats, right? So this is a global distribution map with the outlines of species ranges marked here. It might be a little confusing to understand, but simply what I'm trying to say is the redder regions are the more diverse regions in terms of species diversity. So we'll start with talking about palm squirrels. Palm squirrels are common species pretty much in everybody's backyard. They're in the Vizag Zoo. They're wherever you are in India, as long as you're not in the Northeast, you will probably be able to see some species of palm squirrel or another. There are 4 species that are occurring across India. The 5-striped palm squirrel, which is mostly in the north and central belt. The 3-striped palm squirrel, which is in the south, but also overlapping with the 5-striped in the central belt. You have the jungle striped palm squirrel, which is on the west coast of India. And you have the dusky striped palm squirrel, which is restricted to specific mountain tops along the Western Ghats. Squirrels in India are well known, respected animals, and they are part of our history and our mythology for a very long period of time now. People have noticed them around them in the environment for about 2000 years, right? In Tamil Sangam poetry, we have records from 300 BC, or supposedly sometime around 300 BC. So, and the records that we have, this is a poem from the Tamil Sangam era. They talk about how palm squirrels live in your thatched houses of people, and these are Palmyra thatch houses, and how they come to eat specific flowers and fruits. And these squirrels in the same landscape around South India and Madurai do the exact same thing even today. For 2000 years, things have not really changed that well. Despite all this, we don't really know squirrels. We are not, they're not well studied. And so what we would like to do in our lab is focus on some common species, but that species that are also endemic to the Indian subcontinent. So we're looking at one species in the Western Ghats, and we're asking the question, is a low elevation squirrel moving up the mountain, and how does it use human landscapes? So we're asking whether the distribution of the species has changed over time. So this is the Palani Hills, the Kodaikanal Plateau. The Kodaikanal is a famous tourist town, you might know of it. And this is a landscape where another lab at IISER Tirupati has done some extensive habitat modification work, where they have tracked the change in habitat due to various reasons. And some of this is forestry, where they have planted specific types of plantations, but some of it is also just simply change that has occurred from these initial activities. So we call them invasions, right? So if you look at this map in 1973, you can see that a large part of this landscape is light green, and there are small patches of dark green. And light green is Shola grassland, and dark green is Shola forest. And you have very little agriculture, which is the lightest shade of pink, and you have very little timber plantations, which is the shade of maroon over there. As you go forward in time till 2014, this map is also updated to 2019, but I'm not presenting that here. You can see that almost all the grasslands have disappeared. The landscape has changed dramatically. So where you once had open grasslands and some patches of trees, now is a plantation, is a landscape that is completely full of trees. So you have timber plantations and you have shola forest, very, very few bare open patches of grassland. And simultaneously, the human presence on the landscape has grown. You'll see extensive growth in agriculture and in the settlements in the landscape. So given this kind of scenario, the question that we asked was, how are squirrels responding to this change? So squirrels are not a grassland species. They require trees for survival. And many locals in the Kodaikanal region will tell you that when they were growing up in Kodaikanal in the 80s or earlier, this three-striped palm squirrel was nowhere to be seen. So the Kodaikanal Plateau is, or at least the map we're talking about, the study area we're talking about, is above 1400 meters. And there were no records of the species on the plateau then. However, today the species is quite common. So our question is to see what has happened and to see if squirrels have tracked habitat change in some way. So we surveyed the landscape, and we looked at nest use as a proxy for presence of species, and we looked to see how nests were concentrated across the plateau. So when we did a survey across the entire plateau, we find that squirrels are only present around human settlements and around agriculture. So if you look at the dots on this map, the blue dots are sightings of palm squirrels, and the orange dots are nests of palm squirrels. So we see no dots at all in shola forest or in timber plantation or in grassland. Everything that we see is around agriculture and settlement. So what is going on here? Is there a particular, so are squirrels responding by moving where humans are moving, or occurring as commensals around humans alone? So does the microhabitat of the nest show us something? So we started to look at this much more deeply, and we started to look at nests themselves, what the nest was comprised of, as well as where the nest was located. So when we looked at the nest itself, we were able to tell from the outside, and from using a few fallen nests, we were able to tell the material that comprised the nest. We came up with a key for about 17 to 19 materials. And this included natural materials like lichen or grass or roots or twigs or dried leaves and so on. But also, interestingly, a lot of human material like cloth pieces of cotton or human hair even, or jute thread, things that they get from living around humans. And when we looked at composition of nests, we find that many nests. So shall I continue from here?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
All right. Okay, so in this study, we looked at the three-striped palm squirrel, which occurs on the Kodaikanal Plateau. Now, as a species, it's a low elevation species and does not occur at these high elevations. And we're talking about elevations above 1400 meters. In most parts of the Western Ghats, the species does not occur at elevations above 800, 900 meters. And it was a surprise to hear locals talking about the species occurring there. When we spoke to locals there, they told us that they had not seen the species in the past, like when they in the 80s or the 70s. And so it made us think that this is a relatively new phenomenon. So we sectioned the plateau into grids and surveyed extensively, looking for sightings of squirrels as well as presence of nests. Squirrels need nests to retire to every night, and so the presence of a nest is a pretty strong indicator that the species occurs there. And what did we find? We found that both squirrels and nests were sighted only around villages and agricultural.
Dr. Nandini, sorry to bother you.
No problem. Yeah.
The PPT is not visible somehow. Ramna, can you
Uh-oh.
please look into it? Or madam, please, maybe you can,
Shall I share
close
again?
it. Yeah,
Unshare
close
and
it and maybe share it again. Probably since there's
Yeah,
too
yeah,
many options.
yeah. Checking, ma'am. Just checking.
What are you checking?
I'll check. I'll share again now.
Yeah, probably you can do that.
Okay, I stopped presenting. Now I'm just. Can you see it now?
Yes, ma'am.
Presence of nest is a pretty strong.
1 second, ma'am.
Sure, sure.
Yes, ma'am, you can carry on. It is visible now.
Okay, all right. All right, so we just talked about the species, the three-striped palm squirrel, and how we track change across the Kodaikanal plateau. And this is the summary of what's happened on the plateau over the last 5 decades. Um, and the summary is that grasslands have disappeared and given way to plantations and forests, right? So when we looked at the species, we surveyed all habitats across this landscape, and we asked if squirrels were seen or if we looked for nests. So nests are an indicator of the presence of species, as squirrels need nests every night. And so the presence of a nest is a reliable indicator that the species is using that particular habitat. And what we found after an extensive survey was that squirrels only occurred around human settlements and in human agricultural areas. They did not use timber plantations, which is the largest class of habitat on this plateau, and they did not use shola forests or shola grasslands. So what we see is that they're using only human habitations, not just human created habitations, but exactly where humans are present, right? So this made us ask, how do they use humans and why are they using humans? We looked at the nest composition. We looked at microhabitat composition of where squirrels are found. And with the nests, we decomposed some sample nests into materials, and we found about 17 categories of materials. And these included natural materials like lichen or grass or jute, or roots or branches, or leaves. But we also found a lot of human-related materials like cloth pieces or pieces of cotton or human hair or jute thread and so on and so forth, or even bags. And frankly, after the pandemic, we found a lot of nests with masks even. And we find that over 50% of nests have a high concentration of human-linked material in them, showing us that animals are not only living close to humans, they are interacting strongly with human environments. I've not presented this work here, but we did extensive vegetation work. We looked at the plant composition around nests, and we find that squirrels choose to build nests in places that have a lot of human species, human planted species. So, like bananas or mangoes or carrots, species that humans actively use in their gardens as well as in their fields. So, Squirrels are rapidly adapting to the increased availability of food as well as possibly shelter through humans. Right? So then we expanded the work to look at other species of squirrels on the same landscape. There are two other diurnal squirrels. There is a small palm squirrel called the dusky striped squirrel, and there is a giant squirrel, which is the Indian giant squirrel. So the dusky striped squirrel is a naturally occurring species at this altitude in Shola forest, and we wanted to see if it was also using human habitations and agricultural land, and we found no presence in such habitats. We find it using edges of human settlements, but only when there is some Shola or plantation present. It did not use plantations exclusively. Again, it is linked to forests. Edges of forests are what it uses. The giant squirrels, on the other hand, use plantations, especially plantations that are mixed with shola forest, or plantations that have large trees that are relatively close to shola forest. Um, so as you can see, we have three species of squirrels in this landscape, and all three of them are responding very differently to the same stress of habitat modification. Which kind of tells us that it's not easy to generalize what even one group of related species will respond like to one single pressure. So the second large part of the work that we do in the lab is looking at marmots and pikas that live in the Himalayas, in the Trans-Himalayas specifically in Ladakh. Now, I'll focus on the work on marmots. What are marmots? Marmots are also squirrels, but they are ground squirrels. They live on the ground in areas that typically have no trees. They live under the ground for most part of the year. We call them ground squirrels. They are distributed across the coldest parts of the world, like the northern parts of the world. And there are 15 species. Most species occur in Europe or in North America, and two species occur or Asia, and two species occur in the Himalayas. And now our study system is in this part of the globe, and this map is a slightly different map. It's looking down from the North Pole. So you're imagining the world as centered around the pole, which is the coldest part of the globe. And then you have marmots in a chain occurring in these cold, very, very cold regions. Now the Himalayas are the third pole, and with extremely cold conditions and high altitudes, they are well suited for the occurrence of cold adapted species like marmots. We have two species of marmots in the Indian Himalaya. They are the long-tailed marmot or Marmota caudata and the Himalayan marmot or Marmota himalayana. So marmots are really intriguing. They're very different in how they live. How do they manage to live in such cold climate? It is because they hibernate for 6 to 8 months in a year in different sites, and therefore they avoid the coldest, harshest part of the year by simply sleeping through it. The hibernation usually starts around now, actually, September, October, and they hibernate all the way through April. And different sites are different. In the same site, the different years will be different, and so on. So when they are awake for these 6 months, this is the time when all of their activities are kind of condensed or compressed into this window. So they come out, typically mate, give birth to young, lactate, look after the young, the pups emerge, they start to put on weight, and then they all go into hibernation. It's a truly fascinating system, and they have unique adaptations to come to deal with the cold. So what happens when you have climate change? So climate change is a different kind of stress than the kind of stress I was talking about earlier, which is a human modification of habitats. Now, several human activities have resulted in climate change, but humans don't actively have to be present at a site for climate change to happen, right? So what happens with climate change when you have species like marmots? When you have species that hibernate, you could have patterns that show you an earlier emergence. They might be able to come out earlier in some years, and therefore you might say that they have a lot more time to be out. Therefore, they have a lot more time to eat, a lot more time to produce young, populations will increase, and so on and so forth. You can have animals put on more weight and therefore survive hibernation. So maybe they won't be adversely affected. They might actually benefit from these changes, right? However, when we look at studies in long term, we see that the probability of survival does drop. It is not an increase, and that it increases, it changes, it affects different age groups differently. And again, we know that overall, over time, populations do not actually increase due to climate change. There might be sharp increases and decreases in response, but overall, these are studies from North America that show us that it is possibly not easy to say that this is the impact that climate change will have. Now, we don't have such data for India. And when we started work in 2017, very little was known about this landscape and about species in this landscape. And as I told you, the Trans Himalayas are a forbidding, extremely cold landscape, extremely beautiful as well, right? Vast stretches of mountains and landscapes and high species endemism. So this we're talking about an elevation that is higher than 3,000 meters. The Trans Himalayas technically are higher than 4,500 meters above sea level, right? So extremely low oxygen in this landscape, and given the mountainous terrain and altitude, it is extremely cold as well. So many species that live here are uniquely adapted to live here. And if you look at mammals, there are about 30 species just in the Ladakh landscape, and many of them have evolved specific adaptations. There's a lot of work on large mammals like snow leopards and bears, but very little work on the small mammals. And so we think that that's what we study. So if you look at the marmots in the Himalayas, this is the IUCN range for two species, the Himalayan marmot and the long-tailed marmot. As you can see, the long-tailed marmot is not even described in parts of Ladakh, Kashmir, Kargil. And so we set out to create a baseline data. So all the dark spots, whether they are rectangles or circles or squares or circles, are our spots, our primary data. And we can see that we have found records that are kind of new to science, right? And we find that there is species overlap across these two species and that they occur within 5 to 15 kilometers of each other, though we've never seen a site with both species. We also find that they are occurring in different elevations, with the Himalayan marmot occurring at higher elevations and the long-tailed marmot occurring at lower elevation. The long-tailed marmot occurs from 3,000 meters up to about 4,500 meters. But the major part of the populations that we have surveyed occur from 3,700 to about 4,100. The long-tailed marmot, the Himalayan marmot occurs also from the same 3,000 meters, but these are outlier points, largely from 3,600 meters all the way to above 5,000 meters. So we found that the Himalayan marmot occurs lower than previously reported, but the long-tail occurs higher than previously reported. However, they are quite distinct in elevation bands. So what we've done is take our data and take all the secondary data we can find, and we've created models that predict where species occur using several variables. And just to kind of go through it quickly, we find that the Himalayan marmot is determined by the presence of ice and the summer temperature. It cannot tolerate very high summer temperatures, and it is found in areas with permafrost and close to glaciers, right? But the long-tailed marmot is determined by ice again, presence of glaciers, and how cold the winters are. So here they are found in places that have a specific level of snow or an intermediate level of snow. And this is kind of where we predict that they would be found. What we see is that the two species, even though they seem to be both cold adapted, seem to be very different in where they are found. And there is an overlap, but it's not an extensive overlap. I'm not presenting future models for the species, but we can be fairly certain that with predicted rates of glacier melt in the Himalayan region, both of these species are going to be severely affected in the very near future, in the next 2 decades. We're going to see this change happening and this impact happening in our lifetimes. So we quickly looked at genetic connectivity across these marmots at several sites. And the overall summary shows us that for one species, the Himalayan marmot, we see no large barriers, but we see two clusters of populations already, though there is a lot of intermixing. However, for the other species, which occurs only in specific locations on the more western parts of this region, we already start to see fragmentation in populations across its range, with isolated stretches having distinct genetic signatures. So this is going to increase and exaggerate in the coming years. And we hope to be there to be able to study these kinds of patterns. So I'm going to stop here. And this is basically just an introduction to show you that species can respond very differently. We're talking about one family. We're just talking about squirrels. We're talking about two threats, climate change and human-driven change. And we see that if you change the landscape and you change the threat and the species variables are different, the impacts of changes can be extremely different. If you're interested in knowing more about squirrels, we have an Instagram page and a Facebook page, and people are welcome to join us there and ask questions, as well as watch content that we post. And basically, I just want to summarize saying that this is a very rapidly changing time, and species do respond differently. Some increase in number while some decrease in number. And the way we can study this and understand this is only through long-term behavioral and ecological studies. And that is something we need to make much more of in the Indian subcontinent. So I will stop here and thank all the people in my lab. And I'm happy to take any questions if you have any.
So thank you, ma'am, for the most insightful information. It is quite interesting to know about the small squirrels. So moving on to the questions. So the first question is for Dr. Shravan Singh sir's presentation. Sir, so the first question is like, what is the major thing, the best for the wildlife rehabilitation and its basic importance? Shall I repeat it, sir?
Yes, please repeat.
Yes, sir. Sir, what is the major thing best for the wildlife rehabilitation and its importance, sir?
Best to introduce the recovered animal to the same system. My voice is okay now?
Yes, sir, it is audible.
Our main work is on the rescue and rehabilitation of the wild fauna from Western Rajasthan.
For interrupting, a small suggestion for Dr. Nandini ma'am, just kindly please stop presenting, ma'am.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Sir, I'll start with again the question, sir. So,
Sure.
what is the major thing for the best for wildlife rehabilitation and its importance, sir?
This reintroduction of the any species to the same ecosystem. So our work is to rescue, treatment, then rehabilitate the animals to the same ecosystem, same habitat. So we have mostly herbivores. Then we have some animals of the leopard, wolf, jackal, like. So rehabilitation is the important in everywhere. So population of the big cat and other canids is reducing day by day due to human interference and So our main aim to reintroduce the animal, rehabilitate the, rewild the animal in their natural habitat. So we concentrate on the Western Rajasthan. So our rehabilitation species is mostly chinkara, blackbuck, and blue bull. Then some time leopard, hyena, black, and jackal, etc. So it's also our contribution to the wild from Rescue Center. No?
Thank you, sir, for clarifying. So, moving on to the second question. So, what are the factors affecting survival of wildlife after rehabilitation, sir?
It should be the appropriate place, and there should be plenty of feed and water and water facility. And secondly, we choose the rehabilitation site appropriate for that particular species. So, like in herbivores, we use this wild area and used to try to identify the area which is forest department occupied, well secure landscape. So there is no chances of again injury or re-injury of due to the feral dog and all, fencing and injury due to forward wire and all. No? So feed, fodder, and safety. We considered three things. An appropriate season also. We used to reintroduce the animals, rewild the animals in the August, September. So in that months, we have plenty of grassland and drinking water. So animals reintroduce easily in such seasons. Divya?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. So moving on to the next question. This is a basic question like many people need to know. Like when an animal is attacked or injured, so as it will be in a stressful condition, what is the basic action to be taken for the survival, sir?
To reduce the stress of the herbivores, we usually put the blindfold over the eyes and reduce the hearing impulse. So we cover ear also and try to calm them first. And our vehicles should be in a proper way so that minimize the jerks to the animals. And also during the transportation, we make a cage-like structure. So we don't want to tie the animals from the ropes and all. No? So animals, if he wants to stand up, they can moving inside the vehicle safely. With the same time, vehicle should be made in such a way that injury shouldn't be there. And we need in the flooring, we should use flooring just like sand and soft flooring is also provided by our department, forest department.
Thank you, sir. Though it is a basic question, like I guess many people have come to know with the information. So with this, we end up the questions from your presentation. So moving on to the second presentation questions. So the first question is for ma'am. So what is the resistance of baby squirrels during the relocation, ma'am?
This is dependent again on the age of the squirrel. Most people are talking about palm squirrels when they talk about rehabilitation. In our kind of cities and villages, the most commonly found pup or squirrel pup is a palm squirrel. It depends. If it's a very small animal, the chances of survival can be low. But when it's slightly older, it is possible to save them and kind of release them back in the wild. But probably Dr. Rathore can answer this better than me. They are still wild animals, and therefore one has to be careful about bringing a wild animal into your house. Squirrels can also carry a lot of diseases, and I know it is a very common practice to bring squirrels into your house, but it is probably something to be quite careful about and avoid. So maybe Dr. Rathore can comment on this too.
Sir, can you please answer the question, sir?
Please repeat. I can't.
Yes, sir. So, what is the resistance of baby squirrels like carry during the relocation, sir?
Relocation of the squirrel, no?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
There should be mainly, I have told you, the main habitat, appropriate habitat nearby the human settlement. We reintroduce the squirrel babies nearby the plenty of food material nearby the human settlement. So we shouldn't reintroduce the squirrel. They are from any nearby, bring from the human settlement. So keep in the mind that feeding material and shelter of the baby should be nearby the relocation site. So main thing is there. Then we also soft release is also we sometimes squirrel baby come from wild and then their mother is not there. So due to some accidental or so we feed them milk and we whatever we adopt protocols for some time. We also give antibiotic for life-saving drugs and some growth promoter agents. So when squirrel is big enough to feed their own, then we soft release. Then we release our nearby our settlement, our zoo. So they easily join the group of the wild squirrel. So like we people doing then think other thing Nandini ma'am can say more about the rehabilitation. Huh? So we are doing that. That's the thing.
Yeah, I already commented. So yeah, I mean, we've not done much rehabilitation. In fact, we
Okay.
advise people to get in touch with veterinarians and forest department because of the legality of issues and possibility of bites and things like that. So we advise people to be careful.
Yes.
Sir, one more question, sir. So, like in such a challenge landscape, so do any network of people to communicate about rescues from this region, sir? Like where you're working, like in Jodhpur landscape, in a such a challenge landscape. So, is there any network of people to communicate about the rescues from that region, sir?
Yes, we have a forest department. So forest department have their settlement in every village or every. There is just like police department have the check post and territory of the just the police station. Likewise, every corner of the Rajasthan covered by forest department. So there is some people who is responsible for the that particular area for any activity of the forest department. So with the same time, we have some NGO, just like Business Tiger Force. They also work with us and communicate with us. We have some WhatsApp group also. We communicate. We have one control room for the forest department, wildlife. So whenever they have any injured wildlife from nearby their area, they call us. Then we send our vehicle to bring them, or we tell the concerned forest department officer that there is call from that your area. So please go there and bring that injured animal to us. So we handle the wildlife rescue center, but 50% of case of injured animals coming from other wildlife division, like some part of Pali district, some part of Nagaur, some part of Jaisalmer. So we bring nearby district injured wildlife also. Or now, most majority of the people know that there is a well settled infrastructure of the treatment or rescue and rehabilitation of the from the forest department by the forest department. So they know all these things. They have phone number of VP with all the forest control room as well as veterinarian of the forest department. So they call us and we suggest accordingly. Per day we receive more than 5 new cases of the critically injured wildlife. So per day. So every month we have more than 80 to 90 animals. So among them, some animals die for 5 days after that because critically injured by the feral dogs and road accident. Such type of animals difficult to survive, but other minor injury and other disease condition and other curable disease we try to solve and treat them.
Thank you, sir, for clarifying. So the other question is like, as we know, the feral dogs are a larger problem in open landscapes of Western Rajasthan. So as we know, the black bucks and nilgai are regularly chased, and sometimes they were hunted by the packs of these dogs. So what is the problem to overcome, sir?
Yeah, our department was thinking to establish some animal birth control program. So nowadays in our area, Previously, there was one NGO was running Marwar animal birth controls, but nowadays no one is working on it. Or there is some legal issue, so I shouldn't talk in live cast. So there is some legal issues because feral dogs problem is increased day by day. We all should think for it, and we should convince our thoughts to the higher authority and concerned people so that there is some separate system should be established to control the feral dogs population. Otherwise, after a few time, particularly Chinkara black pig will be vanished from the Western Rajasthan. But now there is no such type established birth control program run by anyone.
Thank you, sir, for clarifying. It's such a information. Moving on to the next question to Nandini ma'am. So, ma'am, do biotic impacts play a role in wildlife conservation?
Yes, most definitely. You have cascading effects that are, biotic impacts, but that stem from abiotic impacts. Yes, of course. I mean, any interaction with any kind of species, whether plants or animals.
Yes, ma'am. So,
Has a
how
certain
is the technology that we can transform wildlife conservation? Like, how can we use, ma'am, the technology?
Different ways. I mean, technology can be used to monitor impacts and to create studies. If you're looking at something like a leopard, the technology, or an elephant raiding, technology can be used to warn people or to, kind of then lessen impacts. Um, you can also use technology to simply monitor populations of animals and watch what is happening so that you can formulate better policies. So yes, technology I think is essential, and we try to use it as much as we can. I think science is using technology more and more, especially in the field of wildlife and conservation, to answer key questions. Genetics and genetic understanding of the genome is also technology driven, and so technology really is a vital part of whatever we study, whether it's conservation or ecology.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for clarifying with the information. So, with this, we conclude the today's webinar session. I heartily thank our today's webinar speakers joined us today, Dr. Shravan Singh Rathore, India, from Wildlife Institute India, the Conservation Project, and I also thank a Dr. Dr. Nandini Rajamani, Associate Professor from IISER. I thank Dr. Nandini Saleria, IFS Curator, IGZP, for the continued support to happen the webinar. I thank all our participants for joining the webinar session. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thank you. Thank you all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.